Hey guys, welcome back to the Sheol Podcast. We've been gone for a few weeks for Christmas break, so apologize for the delay and content there. Today we have a great episode of the Sheol Podcast for you. We're going to be talking to Alysa Conger. She is a forward model who not only has walked the runways in the fashion world, but she now works as a medium and an intuition coach. She has a website, HelloWhoSaidThat.com. Alysa empowers people to trust their intuition and embrace a deeper connection to themselves. We're going to be exploring her path from fashion to mediumship, learn more about her, and getting in touch with your intuition. So hope you guys like this episode. Reach out to her. Be sure to like, subscribe, and reach out to us here at the Sheol Podcast at gmail.com.
A documentary about like recovering trafficking victims before, and I feel like really comfortable on the production side, but this side was different for me, but glad we're here. So
yeah, it definitely like opens up a different pathway to connect with people and also to receive people's weirdness. But whatever.
Yeah. Oh, I love hearing it. I mean, so many. Did you see we had Susan Graw on, and there was a moment. You didn't see that one? Mm-hmm. I would recommend it because you guys seem to be in the same, line of work. But she was like, do you have any idea? Like, do you feel any kind of energy? Do you have any idea who's in the room with you right now? And I was like, let's just skip on. Let's move past this because I know my producer's here and I'm good with that for right now,
That's funny. I like that.
But yeah, she's really great though. If you ever get a chance, she's in LA as well. So
yeah, I'll check hers out.
All right. Well, welcome.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. So yeah, you're a model, right? Are you still working?
When they'll hire me. Yeah. I am a model. It's definitely like, I would say at this point, it's a tool to help finance parts of my life. Because as you might have guessed, doing spiritual work or like woo-woo world work or anything like that is not necessarily the always most fruitful all the time, especially in current times, but whatever. So yeah, I do model. I've done that for 16 years, which is crazy. Yeah.
How old are you?
I'm 30.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So yeah, modeling started when I was a teenager because my dad thought that would get me on track in life, which is like funny. A funny way to think about it. But now, yeah, these days, the industry is just kind of, it's just slowed down. I think that overall people are less interested in that part of the industry. Like, celebrity is not that big of a deal anymore. Not that I'm not at all, but yeah, it's just changing. So people they don't need us as much.
Well, when you get enough notoriety and then you can get some of those celebrity clients, it'll be then it will be a lucrative area for you to be.
Yeah, there you go. Mm-hmm.
So
endorsements.
How did you go from modeling to doing what you do now? And can you describe that a little bit, kind of what you do?
Yes. Okay. So from modeling to now, so I guess it's like we just said, I still do model. It's definitely a part of like my life that kind of keeps the ship afloat at this current moment. And what I do now is my friends and I have landed on intuition guide as like the overarching umbrella term for what I do, because I'm very passionate about people learning how to connect with their own like gut instinct, their own intuition, like the inner knowing that I think all humans they all fully have access to. It doesn't even have to be like a spiritual experience. I think it's literally a part of being a human being. We have more abilities than just like our very standard five senses. So that's the overall umbrella of what I do. And that started because in 2022 on Halloween, my dad killed himself. So in that moment, one, that's like a trauma. I think trauma unlocks things in the brain. But what had happened the week before is there was all of these kind of like intuitive hits that if I would have been paying attention, I would have known it was coming. Not to stop it, but at least just to know it was coming. There was a lot of stuff that was coming through there. I was like, oh shit, that's what this is about. And I was able to tap into that because as a child, I would have like predictive things come through, or, I would see little ghoulies, which I don't really see those with like my regular eyeballs these days. I think kids can see them. Or between being a child and into where I'm at now, there would be moments where I would get a premonition about something and it would happen. And I would always like brush this stuff off because I just assumed most people were kind of operating in that same space. I didn't fully understand that I could like utilize it. And so when I got hit by a car and then my dad died, and those two things happened to me in the 4-month period, kind of like shook things loose. And I was like, okay, it's clear that I need to move down this path. And then I think as listeners might know that when you start taking steps towards where you're called, things start to open up and it moves quite rapidly. So that is how I've landed. That's how I've landed here. Yeah.
That made me think like the way that I think we all know people that will say, oh, I knew my friend was pregnant before they knew they were pregnant and things like that. Do you consider it more, because you say it's something everybody can tap into, you consider it more like intuition than mediumship? Like do you embrace that label? How do you look at it?
So I would say that I do both things. I do mediumship, which if people don't know, that's specifically speaking with spirits and those who've crossed over and that kind of thing. And then also to do more like a psychic or an intuitive reading. And I think all of it to some degree is accessible to everyone. Should you choose to kind of like work that metaphorical muscle in your mind. I think that I heard on the telepathy tapes, I really love the way that they stated this, because this was like, they nailed it. It's like everyone has their brain, which is your smartphone, and then the apps are the things that you can download, and that can like help you either connect or not, or like what part of the brain you want to use. So I feel like I'm here to kind of like help you install that part of the software, because the main thing for me that I'm most passionate about is I think if this is the big reaching goal, right? Like this is like the one that, do I think I'll do in my lifetime? No. But if everyone was operating from a place where they're like listening to their gut or their heart, their intuition, I think the kinds of turmoils and traumas that we deal with in this world, well, wouldn't be like it is. When people are living in an aligned state, I think that there's less pain. Now, I want to clarify, I was having this discussion with someone recently, because I don't, in the like big grand scheme of everything, I don't think good and bad exist. I think our experience here has good and bad. So, if everyone's operating in an aligned place, that doesn't mean pain doesn't exist. I just think that there's a lot less self-abandonment, and so a lot less unconscious pain being inflicted upon one another. Is that making sense?
Yeah, I think so. How is this something you feel like it's always been a part of your life, or was it did it just kind of come along with your father's passing? Were there elements as a child that you went, okay, this something is different?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite ones that I like to tell was my mom telling me that her and my dad were going to get a divorce when I was maybe 6. And I said, yeah, I know, God already told me. So like at that point, I was already just kind of like laying down the like duh of it. So that was happening. And I do remember there being things often as a teenager that I would feel into more than I was perceiving other people feeling into. So it seems like I was already kind of inclined to this sort of nature. I just didn't know that at that point, to the extent it could be utilized, and like kind of how I could grow that part of what I was receiving.
Okay. And you say receiving, and I've heard you talk about downloads in the past. I think you did just now mention downloads.
Probably.
Can you tell people or kind of explain what that process is like? Because I don't think I think there's a reason that people want to talk to you, because I think that most people don't experience those type of things.
Sure. So for me, I've called it a download because it's the best way that I can kind of align it with what it feels like. When I receive information or a download, it kind of feels like, I'm trying to think here. It's as if like you were to look at a page of a book, and instead of having to like read each word and input it, it's like the contents of the page were just like then immediately present in my mind. Or it's like when you recall a memory and you're just like, oh, there's all the information. You don't have to like go in and dissect the whole thing. It's just kind of like placed there. So that's kind of how I would say that it feels. I would also say, to something to relate it to, either like an artist, someone who cooks or writes, even when you're driving, your like mind will go into a flow state. And it might be in those times when you're just like doing something that you kind of find yourself in this like almost autopilot state. You get like a solution to a problem or something comes through and you're like, oh, I could like write that down. That's the same kind of thing I would say is like a download.
Okay. Is it something for you? I mentioned to you, I think off air, that we had spoken to Susan Graw before, and she said that there are times where she is trying to help with, someone who's lost a loved one or the police or whatever it might be. And she kind of has to like spiritually, mentally wash herself. Like when she gets home, she can't hold on to it because it's somebody else's trauma. Have you ever had moments like that? And then how do you deal with that if that happens?
Yeah. I mean, I think all that stuff, it sounds like she probably receives information similar to me. So like I can feel it kind of like emotionally. Like I guess I should explain it this way first. To like learn how to use your intuition and this kind of thing, you have to understand like where does your energy begin and end. So like I know the boundaries now. I've got a very good grip on like where I am and how I feel and that kind of thing. So then when I'm tapping into maybe a traumatic scene or event and reading that, I'm feeling like the information that's coming through is coming through by like emotion. Emotion is like an energetic data point, if you will. And so I'm feeling that come in. And so if you still kind of like keep that like energetic tether to that scene, that does feel, at least to me, like I'm carrying that with me. So then I have to kind of like go through and like almost visualize like cutting those tether lines, or each person has their own way of kind of clearing their sphere, if you will, but you can start to like pick up the stickiness of other people's experiences and the darkness of some of life's events, and then it will emotionally start to impact you. That's how I view it. I mean, I think that can also then tie into, if you subscribe to it, spiritual entity things, and you can really take that as far as you want to, as far as energy to spirit and all of that stuff.
Do you ever feel concerned that like you're in danger in any kind of like any way, really, spiritually, emotionally, physically doing this? Because from what I understand, like you have a website, right? And you're out there, people can contact you and reach out to you about this type of thing. So, I mean, have you ever come across anything that concerned you?
Yeah. So for me, the thing that is like most impactful, that worries me the most, is kind of this, like I've worked on having good boundaries so I can kind of like hold the line when stuff's kind of coming at me. But embodied people, so just regular old humans, when they're in deep desperation, it's kind of, I'm not going to diminish what they're experiencing, but there's this like level of almost like spiritual psychosis that comes with some of their energy that's happening, and they will throw it at me. And the emails I receive are quite wild and intense, and I feel for them. I really, really do. But there's also a version of this where like the chaos that's happening, I think there's two things. It's very potential that it's like a spiritual problem, and maybe there's some big dark stuff going on there. In that case, I have like people that I work with who are more equipped to do like a cleansing or like an exorcism type thing, because I don't do those are not it's not my thing. And then there's also like the version of this story where people are just like not being accountable for their own behavior, and so like the chaos and that like energy of chaos is happening. So when I feel more in danger is actually via the people that I interact with who have kind of tipped over the edge of no longer being tethered at all in this experience, because that gets really intense.
Yeah. And that's an interesting, not what I was going to ask next, but it's an interesting point to talk about, because I come from a healthcare background as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the, so many of these things that we see, like we talk a lot about near-death experiences on this show, and I've had people in an emergency room be like, oh, I was floating above my body. And we were like, okay, they're hallucinating or whatever it was that's going on. And there has to be an element somewhere of, I mean, what we would consider mental illness, right? Do you think that schizophrenia, I heard you talk about this once before too.
Mm-hmm.
How do you view that? How do you view schizophrenia specifically?
So let me just note, to anyone who's going to come at me, I am not a medical professional. Okay.
Oh
Because
yeah,
they
I'm
really like
sorry.
to
I didn't
throw
mean to
that one
put you on
at
the
me.
spot like that.
Just
That's my
no,
fault.
no, that's okay. Just so they know, because they really like to come at me for that one, for having a perspective on this.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the
So I
blame
like
right
to
away
know.
for any meetings. It's my fault.
Hey, thanks. I think it's all very nuanced. I think I'm someone that believes kind of everything and nothing can exist. I think that to say we know for sure anything is, well, it's silly. But what I perceive, especially not for all cases, but schizophrenia to me does feel like this thinning of the veil, if you will, this experience where like I do think that it feels like they're getting an onslaught of information. Like if you imagine this like cosmic soup that's all around us, and it's all of this data of all of life and all of its traumas and feelings, and it would appear to me that they're just getting a flood of this, and it's going through like no filter and no way for the mind to like process, so they no longer can function. So then in some cultures they nurture that, and that person is seen as a shaman, where here in the States we have horrific mental health care, very bad situations, and in fact we crank it up and make it worse if you're having an issue. So that to me, like that kind of like darkness that can happen and that experience is then reflective of the care one can receive. So I do think that they're seeing things that are beyond what most of us can see, and I do think that that's real to some degree, and then I think it's also exacerbated by how we do not treat it.
Yeah, it's interesting to me, that specific topic, which is why it's a little off topic for us today. But I brought it up because
I like it.
I remember talking to patients and saying, I'd be like, why aren't you coming out of your room? Well, there's 3 demons that are following me, and I can't move right now. But
Right.
then somebody will go, do ayahuasca, right, or DMT, and experience entities there. But we see that as like, oh, that's helpful, right? Like that's a
Right.
good thing. So
Hmm.
it's I don't know, it's a weird thing. But let me move past that, and I'm going to ask you about you specifically.
Okay.
Um, for a lot of people, like I think we've all met somebody who says they can see spirits, or people that have passed and things, and even people who don't ever experience anything like that, but maybe they lose their spouse, and their spouse comes back. That's a very
Hmm.
common thing in the grieving process.
Hmm.
Um, for you, was there ever a point where you had that, like, I see dead people type of thing, or is it more, I don't know how to phrase this, intellectual or download the way you described it?
Sure. So I'm envious of people that I think that's rare, can like see in the room, like spirits walking about. That's not my experience with it. When I was younger, I definitely saw some like apparition things that were in fully in the room. And then I had a friend pass away a few years ago, like in 2020, and I did have an experience. It was a very quick flash, that I did see him. But now the way that this works for me, and I've proven this, because listen, I'm also my own biggest skeptic. I want to keep myself in check at all times to make sure I'm delivering like what I feel to be absolute truth. So when I'm reading for somebody, usually what I'm seeing is like flashes in as if a memory or a dream comes through of what this person looks like. And so I'll describe like this is what I'm seeing, or they'll give me a name sometimes. And so then I know, and it's also like if I was sitting with you and I'll get this kind of hit that there's this person behind you, and like the information will come through like, oh, maybe it's a father, and this he had like a love of a dog named whatever. Does that make sense a little bit? It's more like an information download and a general sense around where they might be in the room. I think it's important to note too that I don't think all spiritual encounters have to be from like, I think once you're in spirit, you're not stuck to one location at one time. I think you kind of get to disperse into the all that is, right? So that's my experience. I wish I was seeing dead people more full on. I think that that would be a fun experience, but that's not the gift that I have at this point.
I've always thought that one would be terrifying when I meet people who say that, and not even like on this show, but like, I was in an event. I have like a daughter, and we were at something, and a lady was like, did you happen to have a relative who was a police officer or something, to this guy standing next to me? And I was like, what a crazy jump to make, because
Yeah.
I don't, to me growing up, I would never have thought it's that common, but I more and more meet people that say they have that type of experience. So
I think that's going to start to happen a lot, whether it's seeing like ghosts or whatever, if we want to call them that. I think I'm going to make the jump right now and just say that I think as humans begin to evolve and change, I think those extrasensory perception type things are going to open up for a lot more people. And I think it has to do with just the way that we even learn how to communicate. Language has such limitation. And so being able to communicate through these like downloads and these like other senses is going to be a part of the way that most of humanity eventually I think will communicate. So right now what you're seeing is those of us who utilize our skills with spirit and stuff to kind of make that connection to other people, to spirit, and to like kind of get people online to this experience.
Did you ever, I mean, when you were younger, did you encounter people that were like, you shouldn't pursue this? Or like, how did you deal with it growing up when you would have these downloads? Was it something that just felt so natural that it never bothered you?
I think it is one of those things where it gets brushed off. It wasn't ever like so crazy because I think as a little kid, the reason why this didn't come up too seriously is that the ones when I was seeing like full on like apparitions, I wasn't talking to anyone about that because I just kind of brushed it away. And I don't know why I would do that. Maybe I'm not sure. Like I tried to investigate that with myself. Like as a little kid, why are you not telling your mom or your dad that you just saw this scary thing in the room? And I think maybe any of the times I did ever mention it, not at the fault of anybody, but it gets just brushed off. So as a kid and a younger person, when you're kind of constantly trying to be like, hey, like, don't you guys see what I'm talking about here? Like, aren't you seeing what's going on? And everyone's like, no, that's not real. You just stop expressing it. And so then it gets shut down. And it's not anyone, I don't think anyone's trying to be like malicious with it. It's just people don't necessarily like to have the idea that other things might be happening other than what they see right in front of their face.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I really like about this show is how people seem to be embracing this idea that the materialistic worldview that we've had for so long, especially from like a scientific perspective, it doesn't really make sense when you look at a lot of the data that we now have from near-death experiences, terminal lucidity, all this kind of stuff. I feel like I say it every episode, but it's, that's one of the passions I have for this whole thing. I don't want you to have to get too personal. I know you're open to talk about a lot of stuff, but you said your dad's passing was really the thing that sort of pushed you in the direction of doing this as a career, right? What was it about that made you say, I have to do it now?
So the reason why it was a catalyst, and I'll go into this as far as you want to, you just tell me if it gets too dark, is because I think it's two things that are important to mention. I got hit by a car while I was crossing the street. A Jeep hit me. His fault. And I was unconscious for 8 minutes, and then I had out of body. So there's all of that occurred there, which is like pretty intense. And I think a lot of people that do what I do have had a severe head injury also to note. So that
can I ask you about that real quick? That
Sure.
out of body experience, was that something that you did because of your previous experiences felt really natural, or was it like, whoa, I don't know how to process this?
Oh, I was chill with it because I was like, cool. Like finally something happened. Because to me, my experience of the accident, I don't have memory other than I have memory of seeing me on the like above, and I'm laying on the road, and I have all the paramedics around me, and like my feet are kind of sticking out from them. And then I have a quick memory where I like come back to, and I sit up and I start calling the paramedics dramatic because I didn't understand what was going on. And so the only memory I have of the accident really is a couple things at the hospital and seeing the above view of this. And that to me, I guess it just makes a lot of sense when I heard I hit my head very hard. I had a 2-minute memory loop after that. So I think what happens and what I've heard other people talk about, which makes sense to me, is that it kind of shakes things loose enough to where, you cross kind of the material world veil just enough, and it allows that tether to be a little stronger. Or we can say I'm just a few marbles loose, but whatever. So that happened. Don't recommend, but
Yeah. No, I think I mean, that makes sense. I don't know why that's the case, but it does seem to happen quite a bit. So anyway, continue though. I interrupted you and I'm sorry. I just wanted to get your take on that.
Oh no, you're good. I think the car accident is something that I accidentally leave out a lot because I have minimal memory about it. And then it was so close to what was happening with my dad. So then to note also, my dad's suicide is a severely traumatic event. So we have a 4-month window where like I'm still getting my memory back, have this like horrible concussion and all the symptoms that come with that. And then he does this. And so in those moments there, just like my processing was, well, it's a weird thing to go through that. Like it's like the rug is getting ripped out from underneath you. Nothing is what you think it is kind of the energy that I was personally feeling. And I think a lot of people with traumatic events probably feel that. So I think with this almost heightened energy for me, heightened energy of like, or attitude of, well, screw it. Like obviously nothing is what we think it's going to be. Also following all that happened from 2020 on. And my dad was somebody that he killed himself. I mean, for many reasons, but ultimately because he could not live into who he like really was. For all like, if we were to like look at his like list of things that I knew about him, he's like an artist and he loved to dance and he loved to sing and he had all of these like creative things that he like loved, and he like shut himself down and he got really, really restricted by his own relationship with the Christian church. Not shaming Christianity as a whole, but like his relationship with the church became one that was very limiting to experiencing life. And we were very similar and we were always butting heads because I was like, man, like, can't you just see that it's not this like, it's not all about shame and like limitation and feeling bad about your existence and this whole thing. So what I witnessed directly with him was someone killed themselves who could not face themselves and like allow life to be bigger than what he was experiencing it to be. So for me, I just said, I was like, okay, well, I've got all this stuff that's coming through. It's coming through really strong. And I wish I had better memory because some of my friends were like, oh yeah, you were like getting premonitions about a ton of stuff. And it was like fast and it was a lot. So that was like a big catalyst into shooting me off into making it more of my job, which I want to almost put a note in here is it felt really weird making the jump from knowing and doing to making it a job, because you have to make it a job because the amount of effort and time I put into it, but it does feel strange to take a gift and then make it a job. So that's been like a hurdle all on its own. That it's been an interesting thing to work with.
Yeah, I could see that it would be. Was it, I mean, so did your background sort of like, how has the evolution of the way you approach this change since you've decided to, because you're saying you have this gift, but then you're using it, right? You're using it to help people, or you're wanting to help people with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how to ask this. I mean, was there a point where you felt like I shouldn't do this? I shouldn't use this gift? Or do you feel like you've seen enough people already be helped through it that it's absolutely what you have to do?
Oh yeah, for me it's definitely an absolute what I have to do, because I basically like trialed it with people, and pre the like psychic mediumship stuff, I was already kind of involved in like somatic work and emotional processing, and like, I took like death doula courses, so I was already kind of in the mindset of acquiring skills outside of my intuition and psychic matters to like help people. And then what I noticed would start to happen is I was like, oh, like what these interactions that I'm having with people really do seem to be making a difference. They're telling me this, and they're telling me this over and over and over again. And then I have a couple mentors who've been doing this for a very long time, or a version of this for a long time. And they told me that you have to have exchange. One, because it's the kind of world that we live in, where like, I have to function as a human being in this world. And two, it's an energetic exchange. Like it takes a lot. And it's though this is a skill that comes one naturally, I've also done a ton of studying, and I've incorporated like PTSD, somatic processing, and emotional processing, like all these therapies and what I do, because I don't want to just talk to someone about all their stuff and then leave them out to dry with whatever has occurred. So that's when it shifted, and I've never felt bad about making it a job. It was just about figuring out, or I didn't feel like I shouldn't be doing it. It feels very clear to me, like this is exactly what I need to be doing. It's kind of like that saying, like artists make bad businessmen and businessmen make bad artists. It kind of feels a little bit like that.
Yeah, that's good logic.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: for you, is it something that you can turn on and off? in the sense that like, can you, take your calls, do a session with somebody, and then, I don't know what you do, go for a jog or, or whatever, or is it something that's constantly happening and you just kind of have to, I guess compartmentalize a little bit?
I think for me, I'm fortunate that the way that this comes, like the waves that come in for information for me, it's not so overwhelming most of the time. Like I'm able to have like a pretty clear, I guess, compartmentalization between like an interaction with you versus like I have a session as soon as we're done with somebody else. Sometimes there will be a little bit of like crossover and bleeding in, and I'll be like, okay, like I gotta figure out some like boundaries around this stuff. But for the most part, I'm pretty good at creating those boundaries. It's more like right now with the chaos that's happening in LA or like within the world. And this will happen to a lot of people whose intuitive senses are coming online for them, like really big things. They have such a big energy imprint that it's hard not to receive information about them. And so then it's like, well, what do you do with that? So it's more those things that can become a little consuming, which that's always a work in progress for me to set boundaries with that and like work out, talk on the phone with my friend and like just try to like shut down the whole thing. Literally ask if I feel like it's spirit to be like, hey, like you need to like take a number and go sit down. That happens.
That happens.
Yeah, if I've got sessions, this is a little bit of a tangent, but I think you'll appreciate this. My experience. Fathers who have passed away are usually more eager and more in my space, ready to chit chat than mothers who have passed away. And so, and I don't know what this is. I don't know what has happened here. But if I'm getting ready, if I'm in my bathroom, it is always this like the energy for me becomes very intense, and it's always like I'm getting like download after download after download from someone's father. If I'm having a session with someone's dad who has died, so I'll sit down with them and I'll be like, okay, well, like for the last 20 minutes, like your dad's been like, hey, we gotta talk about this. Hey, I'm here. Hey, I'm here. Hey, I'm here, which is cool and fun. But I think it's a funny thing, and I've kind of tried to ask what that is, and I feel like it's because mothers, generally speaking, are more innately in tune anyway. So they've kind of been like, yeah, duh, I know how to like tap in. And fathers usually are kind of not. And so it feels to me like they are becoming playful once they're in spirit. And they're like, look what I can do. I can like talk through the whatevers. Yeah, that's my own experience. I'm sure other people have different kind of connections in with spirit, but that's been mine thus far.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting time where now where like a lot more people do work from home. I
Mm-hmm.
wonder if people, you know, we're not that far apart in age, but maybe if people my age had fathers that worked a lot and they're just weren't around as much for kids, and I don't know, just a random thought
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
But
Something like that.
with hopefully they calm down for you, but that's
I
an
don't mind
interesting
it.
idea.
Yeah, I kind of like it because I'm like, oh, that means that this session's gonna be a good one because like they're just giving me tons of stuff, and which is fun. And I, again, because I'm not seeing like ghoulies walking around, I think I'm fortunate, so I'm not having what would maybe feel like a schizophrenic experience, right? Like
Yeah.
it's pretty normal to me. This is my experiences has been what it's been for me my whole life. So like premonitions that I get, information about like world events and stuff, I've just had to come to this place where instead of trying to prove myself to be like, don't you guys see that I was right? I just have to accept that like I knew it. It doesn't matter if they receive it. In fact, I don't even need to talk about it. I just and like let it go.
Is that, well, speaking of that,
Mhm.
first of all, we're really glad that you're in a safe spot and you're doing okay in these fires and everything, because I think everybody, well, at least it seems like everybody knows somebody that's been affected by it. Um, if I'm not being too forward with, is this something that is this a struggle for you? Because I heard you talk about um, COVID
Mhm.
on DeadTalks, and you said, I felt this sense of like a mass exodus of people or
Mhm.
spirits leaving Earth. Um,
Mhm.
is there a lot of trauma that you feel with something like this, especially being so close?
I think in this moment, I'm probably in the same place as almost anyone else, where like it's just really sad. Like, no matter how you cut it, if you look at this, you're seeing like wildlife burn and people lose their homes, and like there's just like empathy for human beings going through it so close to my face, our faces here. I think I'm trying not to be insensitive. So how do I want to state this? I might have the blessing, and some might say detachment, to see that all the chaos and like the horrors and the destruction, I do believe that people can, I'm going to use like the buzzword, alchemize it and change it, and it can all be a catalyst for change. So like I am hopeful and curious to see how people take this like loss and carnage and like shift it around, and like what might it awaken in people, like what kind of community can it build. So on the side of like feeling like people's trauma, I also know that this might be a catalyst to create, I think, some very seriously needed change within like the hearts and minds of people. We'll see if that occurs.
Yeah. I think you always feel that way. People tend to be, I think the best way to say it is it's like the humility of being human when things like this happen and you realize how limited you actually are and what you can do sometimes. Do you think that there are, because I know you coach people, are there, spiritual practices, habits, certain mindsets that you practice yourself to be more intuitive?
Yeah, there's some like key things, and they sound so simple that I think it makes people irritated sometimes. It's just dropping into light meditation. Like, you don't need to go into like a full like trance state. Some people can do that, but it's just allowing the mind to settle just enough so that way the kind of like front end clutter of the mind can just a little bit. And then that's when you can start to ask questions, internally or out loud, and you'll be able to kind of hear with your mind's ear information that comes through, and you'll be able to have a better sense of your body. So the light meditation, doing some deep breathing, box breathing is a huge one. 4 in, hold, 4 out, hold, repeat. Doing a body scan, because then you're aware of like, what does my body feel like right now? Scanning out from there, like to your own energy field if you're feeling disconnected. Then you've established this is me. And then from there, you can kind of call in, if you're wanting to connect with someone, something, call in information, then you can kind of feel like what changes within what you already are. So those are like the big ones that I kind of use. I think if you're starting to do it, and if I'm ever feeling a little bit more disconnected, having like a set ritual allows the brain to turn on and tune in. So for me, for a while, it was, I would light just a tiny little like tea light candle and just sit in that meditation and be like, okay, like I'm opening up this channel of communication. And that would help me like kind of reestablish my like intuitive space. These days, for the most part, I found that a little bit less ritual has allowed me to have more trust in myself, which has then opened it up further for me.
Okay. You think it's just being relaxed when you say less ritual?
Yeah, because I think I think ritual is very helpful. And then I didn't want to I noticed I was like, oh, I have to do all these things to make this happen. If I don't do these things, then it won't happen. And that's just not true. The second doubt starts to come in is when the mind gets all cluttery again. And so you lose your connection, or I personally will lose my connection. So I have weaned myself away from ritual. And now for me, it's just taking, like when I go into the next call that I have, I'm going to take 3 minutes and just like drop in, clear the mind, and then just like it's like a visualization. Like, I open up this like energy thing. I almost describe it as like a, what do I want to call it? A wishbone. It's like from me to the person I'm reading, and the little thing to the cosmos. And I'm like, this is going to be our energy, our information highway. And that's what we're going to use.
Okay. Do you ever find yourself like, how do you, what are your practices to detach from this? Like, say you want to just be in not receiving anything, just unwinding for yourself. What do you do?
I'm almost embarrassed to say, because it's total garbage. I'm someone that, like, all my spiritual teachers and friends are going to be like, girl, this is like not, don't do as I do. Listen, I watch trash reality TV. and I zone my brain. I fully like I just go into like I will do that. I'm not saying that's healthy. I'm not saying that's good. If I unplug, like when I'm done with a session, I'll be like, okay, like I call my energy back to myself. I release this person's energy back to them. You know, do a little body swipe and smudge my home. Like there's that version of it, which I do. But then like to really just kind of like turn it off, I go to dumpster fire television for a minute. Heard it here first, folks. If you need to, check out the TV.
I think that's like anybody who will watch this and think that they can't relate to you now completely relates to you.
Yeah, you just want to like be a potato sometimes. Like I've noticed for me, like I love being alone in my space in my time because it is on. It is full on. Like my interactions with people is full on with all their energy, their life, and the trades that we have that experience. And I'm super grateful for that. But then like I need a moment where I'm like, there cannot be any version of on other than snacks, dumb TV, and my dog. And like that's what it is. But unplug.
That's great. What kind of dog do you have?
He's a doodle guy from Mexico, a little mystery mutt. Here. He's mad. He just had a bath before we came on here. He's not gonna do it. This is Leon.
Hey, buddy.
He's like, shut up.
Yeah, I was just wondering how much, I don't know. With bigger dogs, it's a little different, but yeah, beautiful dog. Thanks for introducing us.
Yeah.
So for what you're doing now, what motivates you to want to continue doing this, pursuing this? Because again, yeah, I do feel like more people are accepting at this point, but it does put you in a certain, category. It's not, I don't know. It's not like you're a model pursuing only a career in acting, right? Like a lot of people would be doing. So what is it that you get up in the morning and say, I want to do this. This is what I need to be doing?
Yeah. It's funny you say the model pursuing acting thing, because I definitely think this part of my life has probably lost me some jobs as a model because it's still fringe. Like it's a fringe thing still, especially if you throw like the word psychic and medium, people are like, no. And I've got trolls on the internet that are like, that go wild. I'm like, that's okay. Like you need to do you. Thanks for commenting, I guess. And it is something that I've like sat with. I'm like, okay, like I grew up as a fairly outcasted kid. And so to be outcasted-ish now is fine. It is a bit isolating. It's a little bit lonely when, like my friends that like drop in with me in the ways that I drop in, I found them honestly, like through doing podcasts like this, who are like, hey, I know what you're talking about. So like having community in that space helps me keep going, because it really can be kind of like, people are harsh and it's fine. I've got a thick skin, but I'm like, geez, guys, like take a walk and take a nap and like get off my back, but fine. But to that point, people being that riled up about what I'm doing tells me that something that I'm doing is activating something that needs to be looked at. So like that, there's that version of it. If people are so triggered by it, it's not me trying to be like alternative and punk and like, it's like, I'm like, okay, then we need to like look at this. Like, obviously I'm a mirror to something that you don't want to look at. So let's keep going if they choose. And on the other hand is I've just seen so much growth in people that I've been able to work with. Like, I feel like I'm just helping them remember things. I'm not doing the work for them. So showing up in that way has been really impactful to me. And that's, I think, what drives the whole thing. And like I had said before, I just firmly believe if we were all able to operate from a place of like less self-abandonment, then the kinds of pains and traumas that we're experiencing at large shift, and like it can be a more healed experience, I would hope.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to think about, in the sense that, I would love to be in a group chat with like you, Susan Graw, and like Raymond Moody and people like that, because that'd be a very interesting daily conversation. But let me ask you something, because I was going to ask you what your sort of long-term goals are with this, but I think it'd be interesting to know, like, with your clients, is the goal with each client different, or do you kind of have like an intention you set when you have one of those sessions?
So if you're someone that is just booking like a one-on-one mediumship or psychic session, that's gonna be like your classic, I want to talk to whoever, I want to know about my job. Like there's that version of things. And then there's like the coaching clients that I have. And a lot of these people are people who have been working in like architecture, tech. They're like mathematicians. They're all these people that are very like intelligent people, but they haven't maybe used their intuition in the way that I do, but they're having these experiences where they're going like, what is going on? Everything is changing. And so I'm working with them. They'll set their goal. So like the initial thing is like what do you want to do? Are you someone that wants to communicate with spirit, or are you someone that wants to have like creative problem solving and fast decision making? Because those are all going to be tapping into a similar thing. It's just a little bit of a different focus. So that will be like a few sessions in. But to start, the general goal for the coaching and like what we do is a lot of it is going to be like emotional baggage clearing. It's like that shadow work that everyone talks about. A lot of it's going to be understanding, like I said, what's yours, what's mine, what's theirs. And so the work can be quite confronting. And that's when I started integrating like the somatic stuff and all these other therapies, because people are going, well, shit, I have all this stuff that I carry with me. And you have to kind of put that stuff down to be able to use your intuition in a way that is most effective. I think that's my method for it. So for those clients, the goal is going to be one that's kind of we come to together, as far as it's like being the more spiritual side or the more like tangible life experience side. And then I've got methods that I put in through the whole thing.
What do you mean by somatic? Like somatic, what is a somatic approach? What does that mean?
So it's becoming a real big thing now. People probably will notice, like somatic movement. So that it's your soma, so your body, somatic stuff. Anything that is utilizing your body is somatic. But if you've heard of like the book, The Body Keeps a Score, all of these things, people are starting to learn and realize that it's not just like memories of the mind of trauma, but like your actual body holds on to experiences in your life, good or bad. And so you hold all this stuff. It's where a lot of illness can come from, and there's a lot of indicators within the body of like what kind of traumas might have happened and what kind of emotions that you're holding. So people that, like I'm like this, I can analyze things with my mind all day long, and I'm not actually putting down some of the junk from like an emotional moment, because I'm too analytical. So I jump over processing it by over analyzing it. I hope that makes sense. So dropping with like somatic stuff, that's like regulating your nervous system. A regulated nervous system is going to help you be able to tap into your intuition or your gut instinct almost immediately. Like when you're regulated, you can all of a sudden things become much clearer. Your decision making is much clearer. And so most of us these days are operating in a space where we're in survival, fight or flight mode. We've like never been able to put down all this like baggage that we have. So all this work, like somatic thing would be breath work. People are pretty familiar with that. I mean, I will have people flailing in their homes. Like I have like this music I turn on, and I have them like shaking it out and screaming and yelling and like doing the whole thing. And like, if you think about it, that's really hard for people to do. Why is it so hard to do? Well, there's all these stories of like, that's embarrassing. That's weird. I don't feel free to do this. So it's creating freedom in your body, and you're literally opening up like energetic medians within your body. That was a long answer.
Wow. No, but that's like the least, I mean, that doesn't sound, like wooey at all. That sounds like psychiatric practice. I mean, at least should be integrated in psychiatric practice.
I think they are starting to do that. So I try to be I know I'm out there with a lot of my stuff, but I try to be out there or try to be grounded as well, because I think that we're going to see materialism science and like the woo stuff. There's going to be a bridge, and it's starting to happen. It's getting closer, and people are going to be like, oh, it is all much more connected. It's not actually these two separate things. We're using different language to talk about the same stuff. And so part of my work, that the big goal is like, how can I take a tangible experience that feels as grounded as possible and incorporate this like greater knowledge or access point that I think all humans are capable of accessing. So I'm sticking those things together.
Yeah. And I think it's a really helpful message, because if things like, I'm sure you're familiar with like a life review in a near-death experience, and the idea of like, because it sounds a lot like what you're describing. And also, the idea that your actions have consequences. And I think the idea of kind of getting rid of the old way that we used to look at what we are.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I can't remember what the host said on the last podcast I watched of you, but just thinking of like the bag of bones idea going away really could help the way people treat each other and the way that people live. And anyway, I don't want to, I know we're kind of getting close to running out of time here. Do you have any long-term goals or aspirations with your work? Is there anything projects you're wanting to do, or even impact you'd like to have?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to get out of my own stinking way and finish writing the couple of books that I've started, but that's my limitation is my discipline sometimes around that. So long-term goals would be a couple of books, and this would be something that kind of incorporates everything that I've learned along the way, both intuition stuff and like within making this my career. But we didn't really touch on it, but I have lived a life of a lot of pretty nutty experiences, and I think that those can be a helpful guide to some people, or like something that they can relate to. So that getting that book written, getting the book out about my understanding of like the intuitive or spiritual world, the energetic world around us. Those are the two important things that I have long-term goals. As well as like I would love, at one point I had a studio here in Highland Park, but things change and move and shift. I would love to have a space where I want people to be able to gather and like have community and like do the stuff that I do together. Whether or not I'm even hosting it, I don't even care. I want people to be able to come into that space together. Because I think that all touches on the impact of just helping people. Maybe the like key words here are like kind of stepping away from self-abandon. That's what I want to help people do. I want people to like tap in with themselves overall.
That sounds like a great goal.
It's
With
lofty.
the books. Yeah, it's a bit lofty, but I think it attainable, especially with the studio idea that you had.
Mm-hmm.
But what about? I want to go back real quick because, again, if you have to go, let me know. But the books that you've worked on,
Mm-hmm.
what topics are they? Is it coming more from your personal experiences, or are there specific topics that you're trying to address?
So one I have that's been in the works for a long, even before I started doing this as a job, is just kind of, I was fortunate enough in my life that when some really bad stuff happened to me when I was younger, I was able to, and I'm not saying that everything that happens is a person's fault. But I was able to see how I played a part in getting myself to where I was. I was in a really horrifically abusive relationship. So from that, when that ended, I was like, oh, it's not my fault necessarily that I was abused, but I can see the choices I made and the energy that I was carrying and the things that I did that aligned me with this experience that was informed by my childhood experiences, right? So for whatever reason, I was fortunate enough to pull my head out of my butt and then start to shift my behavior. And so then from there, with the accountability towards my own actions, I'm now holding the reins of my life more than I was. And then over the years, this was from when I was like 20, and then moving forward, it's like kind of pivoting each time I would learn something new, and each time I'd be able to take more accountability for how I'm showing up in my life. And now I am crafting the life that I want. But before it was like I was talking to one of my clients, instead of knowing how to ride the waves, I was just getting tumbled by them. So the life experiences that I've had have taught me to kind of ride the waves rather than be a victim to them. So that's one version of it. And that's not even necessarily touching on intuition. The other thing that's come through really strong the last few years is the download that I've gotten, and I've now seen other people coming out with this as well, is I was describing it kind of as a quilt, but someone else said a grid, and I like that better. But like all of everything that, as I see it, is on this energetic grid system of all these frequencies and all this stuff here. And so your body is essentially the antenna, and then your intuition is the coordinates, and your intention is or your intuition is a signal, and your intention is the coordinates, right? So it's like that's how you're accessing all these points of data. And I think that this might be also what people refer to as like the Akashic records, all that. Anyways, for me, and this thing that I'm writing, this book, is about kind of taking that approach to tapping in and learning how to use your intuition. and how I've been shown this stuff works to some degree. But it's also a very heady thing to write, and I have to like incorporate quantum physicists because I am not one.